Ooh, wait a minute. Oh, shoot.
Okay.
What? Like right now? What? Oh, sorry. Oh, jeez. I just got this. Oh, my. Let me put my glasses on. Sorry, I'm a little befuddled here, but oh, gee, I just got this immediate release. I don't know. I'm going to read it. So it says for immediate release, Department of Education, AKA Department of Condiments and Confusion, Washington, D.C. Secretary of Education unveils bold new plan, A1 for all. And a bold leap from tech to tangy, the U.S. Secretary of Education has officially confused artificial intelligence with an A1 steak sauce and is now pushing A1 education nationally. She said kids are sponges. Let them soak up something tangy. The plan includes a Chromebook and a bottle of A1 sauce for each student. Now, the secretary is still deciding if she wants to give a standard size for each student, or there's the honors program, which is the upgrade.
Stop. I'm
The Secretary of Education calls this differentiated instruction. When asked about the mix up, she replied, AI, A1, who can keep track? Sauce is easier to explain to the voters. For more on this developing story, stay tuned. Or better yet, speak up. Our kids deserve more than flavor. They deserve a bright future. So that's the news that's just in, folks.
but
And
I should have,
we
when you went for the headphones, see, probably no one will believe us that I did not see that coming. I should have known it was a prop. And I was like, she doesn't usually do headphones. And yet I've known you for so long. How did I not know that was going to be amazing?
I
So
did,
my,
you know, I
this is genuine reaction because I did not know. That was like so good
know.
and unexpected. And I'm hungry now
I don't
for
usually
inclusion.
have commercial sponsors, but A1 has contacted me, and I feel like this thick and hearty sauce is just what we need for the day.
Yes, exactly. We do need hearty inclusion.
Yes,
That's
yes.
why we're here.
So, welcome everyone. And this is an exciting day because we get to learn with Paula Kluth. We get to smile and have fun and remind ourselves that learning can be fun. And even with everything going on around us, we do need to keep that sense of humor because that helps us stay regulated, right? So, if you haven't been on our show before, when we've had Dr. Paula Kluth, she is an amazing person. She was a university professor. She does educational consulting all over North America and even in Australia down under. So, Paula, thank you so much for being here. And the other thing is, I wanted to show people we are celebrating the third edition of Paula's book. You're going to love this, kid. And so I'm just so excited because when I'm with you, Paula, I feel hope. I feel things are possible. So, welcome and thank you so much for coming back to our Art of Advocacy show.
Thank you for having me. And you know, I'd expect nothing less than a full cold open, Saturday Night Live cold open. Amazing. And I was trying to think because I'm like Five Timers Club. I've been here. I don't know that we have certainly not talked about autism, at least in a while, if at all specifically. So I knew when this third edition came out, I knew I wanted to talk to you about it because we share so many of these values about what's important, what's emerging. And as you said, a time where we're trying to do two things at once. We're trying to really that art of advocacy has never been more important. But also, we were joking before we came on, like you have to still plan the lessons and we still have to think about practical elements. So I'm super excited. We decided to focus. We were going back and forth. What would be a good topic? The book it's a big book. And so we decided to just pare it down to some just really concrete ideas. And that's what we want to share with folks today. Or what are some things that maybe we could try tomorrow and then look at maybe some of the research or the rationale that connected to those ideas.
Oh, exactly. And yeah, and that's what I love, Paula, about you too, is that there are ideas that teachers and parents can use. And it doesn't require a lot of high tech stuff, but it's amazing all the things that we can really use.
Yeah, it's not all that's in this edition. This edition. So I want to point out that the Just Give 'em the Whale book, I will talk a little bit about
Yeah.
that too. That's on the top with the enormous, gorgeous whale figure there. That idea of teaching into special interests and things like that is, I'm going to reference that in this hour as well. And that's co-authored by my wonderful friend, Dr. Patrick. So I want to give him a shout out. This edition I want to talk a little bit about the rationale for that as well. Is so much is changing in the field. So when we were looking at, it was time to change things, been about 8-9 years since the last. We really wanted to look at things like the evolution of language itself. So you might even hear in this session where I use person first language, person with autism, or autistic person, identity first language. We're not going to get into the weeds today, but on my website on inclusionrules.com, I have a whole download about language, the evolution of language. Certainly, we've thought differently about what things like universal design for learning can do in a classroom. There's been changes in communication and what kinds of tools that we're using, how we're understanding that. Collaboration is changing, even our understandings of what autism is, for example. So, like much better identification for girls and women, but still needs to be better. There's probably a lot of undiagnosed girls and women out there, but some of those changes were newer as well. And also, I think more teachers have more experiences with kids. So that's a good thing. And then we also know that almost probably every single teacher is being touched. And so that needs to have some ideas, some tools, some ways of thinking about positive support.
Oh, exactly. Yes. So we're excited because I know so many people will gain a lot from this. So if you're watching us live or you're watching on the replay, please say hi and give us questions, comments, things that are on your head, on your brain. And in a little bit, we'll be talking about a wonderful giveaway that Brooks Publishing is having for us. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But do you want to go to your slides?
Sure.
Would this be a good time?
Absolutely. So what we're going to do is we are going to take some content from this 2-day workshop that I'm doing. It's a what am I virtual event that's coming up. And so Charmaine says she'll talk about that in a little bit. We'll give you information about the giveaway to that. So it's coming up in a couple of weeks. And I was trying to think about what I could share with you that would give a little bit of a sense of what you'll find in those 2 days. But also if you just happen to come upon this live session and just wanted something that you could try tomorrow. So what we decided to look at were 5 concrete ideas that you can use in classrooms, and even some of the ideas behind these different kinds of tools that you might be able to use in any kind of context. So let's just get it started with one so you get a nibble about what that looks like. And so of these 5, you called them like doable, right? They're like DIY, and they're very simple, and there's a reason for that. And so before I talk about this super fun looking toy, it's like a little CNC, if you remember a CNC from your youth, and I peeled everything off of it. And I added these options of kinds of exercises and breaks, like a dance party or a snowball fight with paper or arm circles or like charades, a little bit of yoga, chair yoga, a beach ball party, things like that. This is a tool that I created for a colleague of mine was looking to add not only variety in their classroom for more breaks and exercise, but some new ideas. And also as a way to collaborate with, say, occupational therapists, physical therapists, and just talk to folks about what are some ideas for breaks that help us maybe hit some IEP objectives, add a little bit of range to what we already have, maybe even integrate something that's a review. And so I've created a lot of physical products that
Uh,
remind educators and others it's time for a break. And so this is just one of them.
I
But
love it.
I
So,
didn't.
like, you can pull the string on it, right? And it will go around like it's this. How
Yes, it will go
fun!
around just like when we were a kid. Remember, I used to say, "What would make animal noises?" So this one, I just gutted it, and so now it will point
Uh,
to you have a randomization versus maybe a virtual option, which isn't always
uh,
visual. So let's just talk about that for a minute. Can we talk about stuff for a minute, Charmaine? Because
yes,
you and I love
yes,
stuff.
yes.
So like to give a pause, like why are we talking about things? And that's going to be certainly one of the things that will be part of these upcoming sessions, but it's also a lot of a part of the work that I do in general. And so the reason for that is even though these 5 things that we're going to show seem simplistic, maybe that particular idea isn't for me. The reason it's important to I think as an inclusion facilitator or educators, why we feature some of our ideology in the form of products
Uh,
is because it's like uh, inspiring litter. Like I always like to shed things in classrooms, meaning the conversation we just had about the power of movement may go away and be forgotten. And so that's why I'm leaving you this particular reminder. Maybe it's a poster with just different kinds of brain breaks, or maybe it is a cute little tool like my see and say, or maybe it is like some popsicle sticks in a bucket that you can draw. But when I leave that behind, it becomes a reminder. Kids might even see it and say,
uh,
we need something. It's like we're feeling like fidgety, or it becomes almost like a lesson plan that's shared. I can say, Charmaine, I have got to take care of an issue. Would you mind grabbing one of those options or spinning the wheel and getting the kids started?
uh,
And so I like it for those reasons. And you might have forgotten about that conversation, but as it's sitting there, it might get you not only get you thinking about the importance of this, but it might increase the frequency of you going and giving access to kids. And this is really important for all, I think for all the things I'm going to share, but movement in particular, I'm super passionate about this. I've written a lot about it. What we know about movement now in autism in particular, it is critical that every educator and every therapist understand the power of movement. Not only do we see benefits across the board, I mean, for any learner, including adults, in movement, where we see a creativity boost when you add movement, even small bits of exercise and movement. We see a retention boost. We see an achievement boost. In other words, kids do better on things like curriculum-based assessments or other assessments. Everybody does better as far as it's a behavior, so we can feel a little bit more at home in our bodies. There's a health benefit to movement and even small bits of exercise. And what we see in autism is that and then some. So a lot of kids don't have bodies that work well for them. And so they need more opportunities for movement. They need more opportunities for exercise. We see in recent studies, even things like improvements in gut health for kids, but certainly improvements in behavior that's like maybe repetitive behavior that's not terribly helpful for the person. There's recent research that suggests that kids' communication and social skills improve with movement and exercise. And you often hear or have seen that even things like just doing some walking around a classroom or beyond can be super soothing to kids' systems. And you and I were talking before we came on about how a lot of kids with disabilities, they may even have less opportunities for movement than their peers who do not have disabilities. If you don't transition a lot because you're not included in all these different classrooms and
uh,
spaces, if you might be somebody who is a little confused about the playground, so maybe you're like sitting out and we haven't taken the time to give you teach you more about some of the rules for specific games, or find ways how can kids engage each other so that you can get some of that exercise. So it's really important when we can control what happens that we use any kind of tool or any kind of reminder for educators that this is really good for everybody. And it's particularly critical for this particular audience, for lack of a better term.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, and then that's the other thing, right? Is parents sharing ideas with teachers, sharing idea with families, because these are tools that right now people are using in the classroom setting, but think of how you can apply this as a parent to your home. And Martha is here with us, and I was going to grab her comment here. She says, "Love this idea. Will definitely add movement to my son's IEP." So look there. I love it. I love it.
Martha, we love hearing that. I will say you've really hit on something in saying that, because I said there's so many audiences that need to know about this research. And that starts with children themselves and young adults themselves, and letting them know that this is something they can do for themselves. For a lot of kids, they feel like I'm bad because I can't sit still, or I've done it again, I can't focus. And letting them know that these are body issues, not behavior issues. If you might need that kind of support, families need to know about it, because that might even say, before we sit down and try to do a homework task, can we take a lap? If not around the block, can we take a lap even around the house, or do a little 5-minute dance with YouTube or something? And again, and everybody in the school needs to know. And again, in any programs that we're in, and faith-based communities, all that good stuff can be helpful.
Yeah, and Anne Marie brings up a good point too. Anne Marie is from South Carolina, and she says, "What if a child, I think she means like transitions 3 to 4 more times a day than their general ed peers, because they're going to the resource room, they're going to the therapy room.
Oh,
Too much walking leads to exhaustion."
yeah. One of the things that we're going to talk about is, first of all, a variety in the ways in which you're engaging. Like, some exercises are better than others
Mm.
for some of those benefits. So why I featured that cute little classroom break idea is that what's good for one is good for many. So we want to have, first of all, a variety of ideas that goes beyond just traveling and walking, what we would do in a typical day.
Mm.
And we want to give kids opportunities. As important, this is a big one for me, is that you want to make sure that the kinds of breaks that we're offering kids, that there's some things that are just for fun and joy, right? We want to have, these are opportunities oftentimes to inspire laughter, decrease stress, all those good things. But we're also looking for things that might connect kids to standards-based instruction. So everything that I am advocating for is support that's going to happen inside a general education classroom in an inclusive context. So we're looking for things that might allow students to have a quick moment of review, things that might allow students to maybe practice something. So what we're seeing, for example, one of the studies that is within the last 5 to 6 years looked at a really nice cognitive benefit for kids in classrooms, where they not only had occasional breaks just for fun, disconnected from learning, but that there were some real nice movement in academics when they were connecting those two things. So maybe you're doing jumping jacks as you're skip counting. So 2, 4, 6, 8, across the room if this statement is true, that kind of
Mm.
stuff. And so we want to look for even just things like going outside and writing like sidewalk chalk poetry, right? So like it can be a lot of different things. And so that's one of the things that we're definitely going to be focusing on in those sessions is, what can this look like? What are the possibilities of what this can look like, especially to get that range of benefits?
Right. Yes. Such good stuff. And Martha also said that, she says, "And I love that I can incorporate this idea at home too."
Yeah, I always say what's great about some of these ideas, especially movement, is like what's good for kids is good for adults. So we need breaks, we need to decrease our stress and all those good things too. So looking for some kind of a tool. And I'll tell you one more thing, and then we should probably go to the next, because you and I could talk about this all day. But the other thing I often say is, what's nice about sharing this kind of tool and these kinds of ideas is that when we think about the benefits for everybody, and we kind of get that range going, I just love the idea that some of these products, like they stay behind and they get willed to somebody else. And then pretty soon we're adding another. And we can do that with families too. We can share some of these things and get them into the hands of folks. And then I'm using this with my other children as well. I brought it to my like Sunday school. And we just want to, those visual supports, I think, can work. These can work as visual supports as well. I guess I'll say it that way. And across lots of different contexts. That's really important.
Oh, exactly. Yes, yes. Thank you. Give us more.
Okay, let's see. Of course.
Is it?
There we go. That's it. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. So keeping with that idea of let's not look past something that's super central to the success of all kids. And again, I know that the event that I'm promoting today is about autism, but of course these ideas can be used across different groups and for different kinds of kids, but they just happen to be like really important for a population that I focus on a lot. So I want to talk about this augmentative and alternative communication for all. So this is idea number 2. And you can see these ideas, we call them cutesy, right? They're products. We can make them in a couple of minutes. And so it may seem that it's in some ways that it's more about decor in a sense, right? Look at this sweet little thing. But it really is a way to transfer your ideology, the importance of these goals to other folks. And so we want folks to walk into classrooms, whether that's our administrators or our families, and be able to see, aha, now I understand how many different kids get access to the curriculum. Like we see something like this. So these are 2 just single message communication buttons. We can do lots of things with something so simple. And the idea here is that kids with and without disabilities should be understanding and learning about different kinds of communication systems and having opportunities to access them as well. So if Charmaine has a communication system, let's say she's using like a dynamic menu or something, I'm not going to take that out of her hands so that I can communicate with it. That's her voice. But what we can do in the classroom is we can have symbols in our play areas, or we can have single message communication devices, or we can have simple communication boards for kids to choose what song they'd like us to sing or what warm-ups they want in physical education. Anybody can use those things. And so as kids approach in like a pre-K or kindergarten and they're making a prediction in science, do I think this object will sink or float? They can tell us, they can speak, or they might have the option of using a single message communication button. In my experience, almost everybody chooses Jeopardy. They all want to push the button. Will it sink? Will it float? And this is really great because what it does is if you don't have a disability, it is a way to communicate. We value lots of different expressive options. And here it is a way to learn from a literacy perspective. You're learning new symbol systems. It's a way to normalize that there are lots of ways to communicate. And so that's the universal design of it all, right? That in this classroom, you'll learn all kinds of tools. And that's a goal of universal design, that kids will leave like they're savvy. They know lots of different tools that they can use for learning and expression. And so all those things are important. If you do have a disability, super interesting and helpful too, because all of a sudden you're thinking, oh, wow, other people use this. There's a lot of kids with disabilities who have never seen we give them a device, we give them a tool, and they've never seen anybody use augmentative communication. They've maybe never seen anybody use augmentative communication effectively, efficiently, maybe at all. And now we're saying, can you greet your peers or can you make a choice? Will it sink? Will it float? It'll be a lot easier if you're seeing other people using those tools. I always say it's like learning French, but you've never heard anybody speak French before. So these tools are supportive. So I just give one example, and it could look like lots of things. And we think about going beyond the classroom. This could be something that, again, we use in other contexts. It can be if you are in, say, a recreation program, there might be a button at the door where kids greet each other and they can either say hi to their friends or they can access a greeting with just something that costs a couple of dollars from a discount store. But again, you've seen probably augmentative communication signs on playgrounds. We're seeing more of those.
Right.
And maybe showing kids different ways that they can interact, make choices, invite a friend. So all of that stuff. And if you're playing a game at the dinner table, like some families, like I know we used to, when my kids were small, we would play different kinds of guessing games, or we would play a game where everybody had to something in a category. So you might even just have a choice board there where different people get
Mhm.
to point and choose what kind of game that you want to play while we're sitting here and enjoying Taco Tuesday or something. But the more that we are not just responding to see, but we're also modeling what it looks like to access it in this way, that's powerful for everybody.
Yes, and I like how you're talking about normalizing that there's a variety of ways to communicate through spelling, through
Yes.
the augmentative communication, through lots of things. And that's the thing for the student themselves to know that other people are also using communication in other ways, but then for their classmates to normalize that too and understand. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And
So,
teachers,
yes,
and like I
yes.
said, if it's Sunday school teacher, your recreation coach, like whoever that may be, that we are showing we're like models. And again, it's also an uplifting and a celebration and a highlighting of this idea that there are many tools that can be used in expression, and just it's like sustaining and supportive for kids to learn other languages. All of that same all those kinds of that rationale applies here, and it can be something as simple as just bringing some of these tools in and showing doing a modeling. And that was one of my things that I used to do as a teacher, is I would say, can I bring something, or can I try something?
Mm.
I remember one time I brought in, it wasn't this, but it was something like this. But I brought in a communication tool into a classroom, and I said, I made something for you. Happy birthday. And the teacher said, it's not my birthday. I said, we can just keep it. So I just like to bring in gifts, just leave that kind of litter, that litter that's a visual supports that will stay there and maybe provide some inspiration.
Yes. So let me go back here to your slides. Yeah, and Anne Marie was saying that her daughter's using her AC to complete a speech tomorrow. So cool.
So
Isn't that?
Anne Marie and the kids, not only is that going to be so helpful for kids that haven't seen that, of course it's in the end of the year, so they have, but I bet those kids are curious, they're interested, they want to know about it, they're impressed with what she can do. And that's the other thing, when we see kids as they become more savvy and they become more skilled. We have a lot of kids who are learning these communication systems. They have to learn something that their peers don't have to learn. There should definitely be credit,
Mm.
in ELA for all these things that kids learn. But so she's really teaching. There's a really lovely reciprocity there with your daughter. I love that.
Oh, I know. And Kristen said, let me read her comment. These are so effective for kids who struggle to isolate a finger to use an AAC device, and something
Mhm.
schools often overlook. Do you recommend having some of these more permanently in place around the classroom
Yeah, I
as
think we
far
should
as like
have.
the buttons? Yeah.
I think speech pathologists are like, will be like Jess. We would love to see all kinds of augmentative and alternative communication around schools and playgrounds and churches and synagogues and you name it, right? Like we should be having like a communication. You could have a simple communication board in the nurse's office. You come in here and you're hurt and you can't communicate well or easily. That's really good for everybody. There can be menus in, no pun intended, but communication menus in our cafeteria. You can have board maker symbols that help kids understand and decode Pledge of Allegiance, and help kids to even maybe participate in some schools where kids get to do the announcements. And so maybe there's more than one way to greet my peers and all of those things. I think that's and I think it's also a really fun task, by the way, for student councils, for kids to think about, hey, here are some different ways that we are communicating and modeling augmentative communication around our school. Do you have other ideas? And they always do.
Yes, ask the kids when in doubt, right?
Always
Yeah.
ask the kids, yes. By the way, I have to say, Sherman, we're getting so many great comments. Do you wanna give our little information about what these
Yes,
comments can do?
that's
Because
true. Yes, like I said at the beginning, Brooks Publishing, who is the publisher of Paula Kluth's books, is having a giveaway because, as Paula mentioned, she's doing a 2-day virtual event coming up. And so, what we're going to do is for every comment that you make, a comment or a question, you'll get an entry into the drawing that we're going to have for a free ticket to this 2-day virtual event. And we're going to say a maximum of 5 entries per person. But so between now and Wednesday, midnight Eastern time, ask your friends, ask the teachers that work with your child to come and look at the replay, and they also can get entries as they write comments or questions when people are watching the replay. And Paula, do you want to tell them a little bit about the 2-day event that's
Sure.
coming up?
Yeah, so I've never done a 2-day on this, certainly a virtual session like this. I've always wanted to do more than my traditional have the 3 or 4 things that I get to do. One thing I never get to is behavior. And so I had asked my
Mm.
publisher, like, would you be willing to work with me on this and doing something where I could reach people and not just go to school districts and things like that, but reach anybody that's interested. So they decided that they would be want to partner with me on that. And we are doing this 2-day in the end of the month here. And I have 3 colleagues. I always say these, all 3 colleagues, Amy Frechette, Stephen Hinkle, Tiffany Hammond, who is, I have to plug this within a plug, the author of A Day with No Words about AC. So I have some guests where I interviewed them and I'm incorporating some of their voices into these 2 days. And I just want to be able to share everything that I have learned, especially with this last edition. And what you're seeing here is a theme. Yes, I want to provide ideas that are related to supporting people's bodies and behaviors and communication, but I also always want to intersect that with inclusive education and standards-based instruction. And so that's a big thrust here. So we'll put a link in the, find a link directly to that, but you certainly don't have to, these ideas work independently of understanding anything about that event, but we just wanted to give here to give a taste in case you're wondering, what are we doing? So yeah, Kristen, we can do the link. I think we can put the link in here. And then the link is also on my website on inclusionrules.com on the front page. So Anne Marie, I'll answer that question really quick too. We will, yes, you can get the information on that front page. And then Anne Marie's question, do I have training for teachers around Down syndrome? Yes, we actually do every fall. I do a 4-part session with Illum Learning, an Australian group. And so that information will come up in late summer and you'll see about that. Usually happens around September, October, if you're interested in that one. So thank you for
Yeah.
putting that up there.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is I find these ideas that Paula has like work with lots of kids, right? And
Definitely.
so that's the other thing, is to challenge, like, how can we use this and apply this in another way? So I'm going to put, this is on a banner, but I'll have to, yeah, obviously that's too long. So I'll put that in the group too. And that's the direct link to register for the webinar.
Thank you. All right, I love a good plug. Listen, for all the good stuff, but we want to get to the good stuff too. So let's move on. I want to show you something else that is directly related. And even though this looks like an idea for young children, I want to give you some ideas for older kids too. And certainly this already happens in home, in schools, in other contexts. But this idea of using RALIA, real objects, tangible things for learning, is really critical, especially when we do partner this idea in our mind that it's just for young kids or people with disabilities, but really using objects can be not only a novelty for a lot of kids, but this can bring in an element of whimsy and comprehension. So I'll tell you about story kits, which is something I'm going to be talking about. I've written a lot about literacy. This is an idea that you can probably get an idea just by looking at it. This is a story kit for a book called Saturday, about a little girl who's just running errands with mom on a Saturday. And we have all kinds of objects that relate to that. So we've got the little girl herself, we have a guitar, we have a dog, a spatula or some kind of kitchen utensil there, the bus, a flamingo puppet, because that's part of it. And what we've done with these is we've made something abstract more concrete. So I might ask a student that has complex support needs, where does she go first in the story? So I can use this as a comprehension support, or I might use these as writing prompts. right? So I might have one group that's going to retell the part of the story when they're on the bus, or one part where they're at the library. And so we've used it in all different ways. But what's really important when we think about this is expanding what this can look like for other kids to give some of those other benefits. So we've done this for older kids. Like I worked with a group in a middle school and they were reading a book called Front Desk. Some people may know about Front Desk. And it's about a little girl that's working in her family's business, and we had like a little tip jar and a Yankees baseball cap because that was part of her journey, and some jeans. We had some little doll jeans because jeans, like a pair of blue jeans, was part of it, and a sparkly green pencil. And so we just we did this for prediction too. Like, what do you think this book is about?
Mm.
For some kids, this can be just about an interesting way to introduce a literature, but for some kids, it's also like about memory, making some kind of an association. I've used this example a lot, but years ago we did this for reading the Diary of Anne Frank. And I had kids who I
Yeah.
was a little bit afraid that the gravity, it would be a lot. And I wanted to make sure that we communicated just right up front, this is serious. So we had Anne's picture. We had a little diary in there. We had Anne and Margot's picture, her sister. We had candles and a plate from the table and things like movie star pictures. And this was incredibly powerful. We put all the objects out to start and we just asked kids to, what do you see? And we talked about symbols and things like that in the book. And then kids wanted to know what happens to Margot. They just started to have questions. And so when you're doing those KWLs, like props and products can be really helpful. So it doesn't have to just be about communication. This is good teaching. This is another mode of representation that, yes, it helps kids who need that support, but it can add another dimension, quite literally, to the lessons themselves. And so we've done a lot with these kinds of kits. We've actually even did an offshoot in that particular lesson where we had kids bring in their own objects. So now I said, Mrs.
Mm.
Middle School, why don't you bring something, not that reminds you of the book, they hadn't read the book yet, but I said, bring something like you're going to live in an attic and you can't bring your things, but you can
Nice.
bring one thing like a diary or movie star pictures that Anne brought, that you could bring something. And we did what I call sophisticated show and tell. And we had the kids bring in things. And so again, it just also boosts our creativity a bit there, but also helped kids really start off that book study, like really centered on the gravity here. And I add this idea of Ralia as well, because this is something that we talk about a lot with multilingual learners. Again, reinforcing the idea that what we do for some is so helpful for all. But Ralia is what we do here with the kids. Ralia means bringing in an authentic object that will help somebody who's unfamiliar. So I think, remember, Mr. Rogers would do this. Like he would teach
Mm.
about a banjo and then he'd bring you a banjo. If you'd never seen a banjo, it's helpful, right? Again, really helpful for language learners in that sense. But again, for all kids, it can be useful. So I just brought some things from my house. Like we're reading about kids in a competition. Like, what is it? What is a trophy? What does that look like? And some kids that's unfamiliar. Or we're reading about a violinist and I'm bringing in a bow and I can have them, do kids want to very gently touch it and know it? And so this kind of idea, going from abstract to concrete, can be helpful. But again, I love these ideas because for a lot of kids I work with, they do become a communication
Mm.
opportunity. So whether that's showing or sharing or pointing or lining up, and again, it gives us ideas for communication that get us out of, or let me say it in reverse, that are standards based. Let's get into the curriculum. And so I
Right.
thought that would be a fun one to share.
And the other thing I think about too is being a retired teacher, using these tools like makes teaching more fun, right? And the
Yeah.
teacher gets involved and it's this breath of fresh air when we can pull in other things. As parents, if you try some of these at home, you just feel that excitement that your kids are like, "Ooh, this is cool and this is fun." And that learning is still going on in the background.
And I love that too for a family member. Sometimes we can get lost in that too. We're so accustomed to explaining things around the house. Never ever underestimate all those things that you do when you are showing things off or explaining something, or you're at the museum and you don't always get the reaction you want. You might have a child it's hard for them to express themselves. But what we know now is like all that pouring in of the good information, all of that modeling, all of that exposure to some of these different tools, items, objects can be very enriching for all.
Oh,
Keep it up.
exactly. Yes, yes. I love it. I love it. I love it.
All right, let's go. We're going to be here all day. We just
I
keep
know.
chatting. Okay, anyway, let's get on to it. Okay, this is actually straight from the book, sketch notes, doodle notes, all those kinds of things. So again, families, definitely this can be something that you can do with your own kids. I did it a lot with my kids with homework, where I would say, as we're trying to understand and read something complex, let's draw. Or I would draw. If she didn't want to do it, I would draw as a way to support our comprehension as we're moving through something. And so we would do things like, I just remember when one of my kids was in high school, and some of these texts were just so abstract, Dorian Gray, things that the tears would come. This is so much for me. And I'd say, let's back up. Or it could be something like in a social studies lesson. So there's two things here that I want to point out. One is that a lot of you have kids that like to doodle and draw. You might be that person. And I want to let you know the research in this area is pretty incredible. Not only the research on doodling itself for comprehension and how it helps memory, but even things like doodling and drawing and sketching. There's a kind of a well-known study by a researcher named Andrade, Andrade. And Andrade essentially had people listen to a very boring phone call. And one group listened without any interfering task, if you will. And the other kind of was shading and coloring. So think about these coloring pages I'm showing. And the group that was coloring and shading remembered something like 32% more than the other group. And that led
Um,
to, it was a business that was really big in the business literature. It wasn't an education study. But like then you started to see all kinds of other education studies going beyond shading and coloring and then into things like, what if kids actually, we encourage them to draw a circuit, or we encourage them to draw
uh,
a current, or we encourage them to draw like simple machines as we're teaching about it, or the Battle of Normandy or something like that. So we've done this in two ways. So the one caveat I will have here, I love sketch notes. I love making kids like sophisticated sketch notes where they can listen and draw and doodle. Of course, you
uh,
can imagine the caveat here is it has to be age appropriate. We don't want a kid sitting in a classroom, shading a clown coloring sheet. We've been there, done that, right? We want something that would be dignified and appropriate for any kid. Again, we're looking for something standard spaced and something that might help anybody as another mode of expression and or representation or engagement for that matter. And then the other part of this is more of a teacher created sketches so that kids can shade and color. But when we're talking typically about sketch notes, we're talking about kids that are actually drawing and doodling and doing sense making on their own. But I put those together because for some kids, they need us to start the process and then they can add the little ships or they can add arrows and things like that. So it might be collaborative with these kinds of
uh,
pages. But again, great research. And it also, I think, gives that pat on the back to those of us that did draw and doodle and color and were told that's the wrong way to do it.
yeah, and then I love it because I am a doodler, or I use paper clips as my fidget.
Yeah.
But and also and then think of if the child brings that home, they have this whole piece now that they can use as a communication starter with when the parent says, "What'd you do at school today?" Yeah, I love all these ideas. These are
Well,
just
and you
amazing.
hope that it helps to make the connection. Again, one of the goals of products, like I said, you and I, we both love this stuff, right? And part of the reason we love it is because it communicates to audiences, anyone, any stakeholder. Oh, I get it now. I get how different kids could access this. I get how we can make this more comprehensible. And so when you walk into a classroom and you see these different tools, or you unpack the backpack and you see this, you won't have that sinking feeling like, how is my kid going to do this? Are they even
Right.
thinking about you get it. You're like, I get it. And then when you know that everybody's getting that supplemental material, and that's what happened during COVID. I started making those coloring books a lot in COVID. I made one for a kid in like a biology class. It was like cells.
Right.
And the teacher saw it and he's, can I have that for everybody? Because this
Right.
kid didn't want to go to class, virtual class. And then he made the next one. And he said, this
Huh.
is a really great, kids in med school will draw systems and things like that. Right. So that's like really important. So that we know that's sanctioned. We understand the power of that. And what I like about it is we see it again across different fields. And kids with and without some of these needs not only can find access, because again, we can either shading, coloring, we can have you do the drawing. There's lots of ways to engage, but the research behind it is strong and plentiful at this point as well. There was one question here, and I see your question. I think you were talking about the story kits though, but math, could you use this with math? And I think either one. I've definitely have seen sketch notes used in and drawing and doodling used in mathematics. If you're talking about objects used in mathematics, yes, we've done those in math as well. And you can do it with the integration of like manipulatives. So looking at either, and like your math coaches, or if there's a great math teacher that you're working with, or you're a math educator, talking to those folks and breaking into your closets that have all those great manipulatives, that's a nice way to do something that's in like a mathematics or science, is making a chapter more vibrant, is saying, what do we have here in terms of models? Or can we make some models? I'm working with a teacher, they use their 3D printer for a child with low vision. And so some of those tools can be brought in for any learner, whether it's base 10 blocks, we can, depending on the age of the kid, there's probably materials in the school, or we could work with our teams to create those that could be used over and over again, like across classrooms and so on.
Oh, exactly. Yes, yes.
Okay, so I want to get this last one because I also want to talk about those 2 downloads, my friend. Okay, so
Okay,
thank you
yeah.
for the comments. These are fantastic. Okay, so the last thing I want to say, this is a real hint towards our 2-day event coming up. And I'm so embarrassed. Charmaine, do you have the dates in front of you? Because I want to say it's April 20th.
I think is it the 23rd and 24th?
That's what I think too. And I was just going to say it. Gosh, my publisher's going to kill me. So yes, that's the 2-day events coming up, April 23rd and April
Yes.
24th.
Yes, Wednesday and Thursday. Yes.
Is that it?
Yes, Wednesday the 23rd and Thursday the 24th from 8. This is Mountain Time, but yeah. But
I
yeah.
should say too about the event that if you can't, anyone that's signed up for our event, you can get credits. So you can pay, I think, $25 if you want to get your CEUs, and it's available for 2 weeks. So if you can't join us on those 2 days, that's okay. You'll have that material for 2 weeks. So if you are thinking about it, or your teachers might be thinking about it and things like that's a good thing to know. And you can find all that information on the registration page. But anyways, the reason I brought that up is because a big center of my work is fascinations, special interests. And you could see that because I have the whole book, Just Give Them the Whale, about this. This is like a little social narrative made with some fierce looking superheroes. And these superheroes are trying to figure out what are some of the guidelines once you get into the lab, this tech lab. And so I said, I should find an open station. Yes, Britt, that's what I did. Should I sign in first or get my lab book? Definitely sign in first. I guess I was being dramatic this day, but it is a very severe looking cartoon. But anyway, so this is for a kid who obviously loves any superhero. And so we've done this a lot, and it can be very simple. One of the most simple that I've ever done as a kid who loves James Bond, we would send his homework home in a briefcase. But again, in a few minutes, I can't get too far into, but one of the things we're going to highlight in that first day of that workshop is really talking a lot about the emerging research in special interests. And somebody talked about Down syndrome. We see special interests in Down syndrome and ADHD, autism. It's all of us, right? But for some populations, it's very significant. We want to support that. The research, just in a nutshell, here's what it is. We cannot afford to leave these kinds of interests on the sideline or simply as a reward because you did a good thing or got your points today. There is so much research at this point to suggest so many benefits: communication benefits, language benefits, behavior benefits, vocational benefits, calmness, feelings of joy and satisfaction, academics, inclusive benefits. And so we started having a body of research in the 1990s, and it's just really ramping up. Dr. Rebecca Wood released a study, a beautiful study around time of COVID that basically, and some of these benefits that I'm sharing, she's reinforcing that we're seeing these. There was another study around that time that I'm going to talk about in the sessions that was around literacy, that kids did better and made gains in literacy when they had access to text that was related to their special interests. So anyway, fantastic literature. And we need to be developing products, experiences. I don't think it's easy to do, especially if you have an interest that's really different. It's not easy, but it's important that we not only have the conversation about how important this is, and that we sort of divorce special interest from just this idea of it's what you get when you do a good job. Like it's just part of a reward system. That's leaving a lot on the table. And when we know that there are all these potential benefits for, again, standards based learning and beyond, we can't just leave it there. I think families are just great at this. They have all kinds of ways of encouraging and supporting and knowing how to find time for it and looking for spaces where we can draw back and then come forward. Families and, of course, individuals themselves have been talking about this for years about the benefits that they see and how they bring it into their own lives for joy and comfort and learning. And so we need to listen to those voices and not only find ways like creating products like this, but also I was just another example I give a lot was a kid that loved American politics and he never wanted to do anything that was group oriented. And so if we'd say turn and talk, say, no way, things like that. And then we started saying, okay, now we're going to caucus. And he'd say, no, that's what I'm talking about.
How cool is that?
It doesn't have to be a big thing. It doesn't have to be even a physical product, but I bring in those physical products to make that point. So there is one handout or download connected to this.
Okay.
And are you going to put these in I can put them in the chat when we're done too. I can put a link to this, but this fascination focused curriculum map is one of the downloads we want to give you. And you essentially do is as a family member, as a teacher, like your team, you can do it with your IP team, is just say, my kid really loves air raid sirens. Let's just brainstorm for 10, 15 minutes and think about all the things that we might be able to teach and support around that interest. And so it could be part of a product that is part of transition. And I always say that the process is more powerful than the product. You don't have to necessarily use everything that you generate. You won't. You'll use a few ideas. But if it's Lego, if it's For the Explorer, whatever that character, Paw Patrol, Australian rules football, like just what does a person love? And then let's think of like how this might apply to science, or is there a language change we can make for math, or how about art, or how about that briefcase? So that's one we want you to have. And yeah, thank you, Charmaine. It just, again, you can see where these products, even though these aren't objects, again, I make a lot of downloads on my website. I just put up, I think it's 4 months ago, there is an area of the website at the top with a menu. And one of them says like articles or readings, and one of them says bio, but you want the one that says downloads. And this one isn't up yet, but it will be up because we're about to put some new products up. But that's where there's a lot of worksheets and things. And again, that's an opportunity to get something that's related to our ideology, our way of thinking, our philosophy, our inclusive values into the hands of folks. And it starts a discussion. Okay. Ninjas. Oh, and I love it. My son loved ninjas, and they used it when learning about silent E's. Great. Ninja. I love it. I love it.
I know.
Because the
See,
families
like
do
it,
this so naturally. Yep.
yeah, it makes a huge difference. And there's, and yeah, there's just so many ways to tie the curriculum in that, yeah,
And
I just
and
love
and
it.
Anne points out it doesn't have to be, it's not terribly complex. Some things are harder. I've made things that have taken me more time, but again, when we know the benefits, it's not even just about its kind, which I love, but I think one of the things that we can do in this discussion is now say, and I wrote a lot, that was one of the reasons for the book too, was like there was so much new research. So I did add a lot of that research to that section and just said, if you haven't been keeping up with it, there's a whole reason that we need to turn our attention that way. A whole list of reasons. So the last one is disconnected a little bit from what we've been talking about so far. I shouldn't say disconnected, but it's adjacent in a sense. This is not so much about classroom practice, but I wanted to say one thing because, like I said, when I was doing one-day workshops, I never got to like really taught more about problem solving and advocacy and behavior, those kinds of things. And so in these days, I'm going to get to do that. And one of the things I'm going to get to add is this idea about self-determination and some tools.
Oh,
And so there's a lot of tools I'm going to share. And one of them is just something so simple as something called a 2020 list. And you're going to have the download here. This one just says list 20 things you want to be, list 20 things you want to do. Everyone that watches this should do this for themselves. Every child, a 4-year-old, should know like a lot of things that they can do well. Every child should know some of their strengths. And it's always heartbreaking when you ask a kid to name their strengths and they start telling you the things that they feel that they don't do well. And so for a lot of kids, that's like really amped up depending on how many meetings they've been to and how many times they've been assessed and things like that. So we're going to talk about like strengths and wishes, a tool called Strength and Wishes. We're going to talk about just list making. We're going to talk about even things like vision boards or collections of favorite things, just all the things that we can do. And by the way, this is not just about identified need. Is it critical for kids with disabilities to know their strengths and be self-advocates? Yes, because they're asked at a very early age to understand those things as they transition. They're asked to know, what do you want to do? What do you want? What work do you like? They're 13, 14 years old. This should be something that we're talking with all kids about all the time. And it is also a big centerpiece of universal design for learning, that kids have agency and they know themselves. So we can adapt these activities again through augmentative communication. We can give kids lots of models as they hear their peers talk about strengths. We can give them lists where they highlight or circle ideas. And we can use lots of different approaches where we are even something as simple as we talked about the sophisticated show and tell, right? Where kids bring in something that's related to one of their strengths. There's so many activities we can engage in where kids get to know their skill set, where kids get to know like one of their dreams. Like all that stuff is critical for learners to become better learners and to become more complete in a sense with as a student. I wanted folks to have that as a little taste as well. And just thinking about what are some things, and these are all things we can do, of course, as families, right? We can do this in any context. You can do this if you're somebody that's running a summer program. If maybe it's some kind of recreational program, we can ask kids to be doing an accounting of things that they've done well this week. So that's really helpful stuff, not just in that moment, but it has like an afterlife.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Yes. And I would encourage you to do this as adults because, yeah, it's also important for us to know our strengths and to feel comfortable saying, this is something I do well.
100%. Yes. So will be in there too, right? We'll get that
Yes,
down.
we'll download that link.
And if
Yes.
you don't have a download, you just can make 2 lists. You don't need my cute download. It's just 2 lists. That's all it is. Or you can come up with your own ideas. But we're hoping that give you not only a taste. The idea was like the taste of the workshop, but really we wanted it to stand alone. So if you're just looking for, again, what's some of that newer research? What is some of the language behind some of these tools? Can I sneak in a way of thinking with a tool? Yes, you can. So we're hoping it answered some of that.
Yes, thank you. And then do you have one more slide or?
No, I think that's it. So there's just those 2. Yeah. Oh, I
Okay.
just have
Okay.
said that. Yeah. So if you have it, yeah. So it doesn't show it here because I was sloppy, I guess. But if you go to the website, Inclusion Rules, and there's like a ribbon at the top, you can find other downloads that are related to inclusion and related topics, and some other blog posts and things like that might be useful in your inclusive journey.
Yes, and if any of you haven't been to Paula's website, it's so delightful and it's packed with practical ideas, some of which she showed today. And then just to encourage you, this is the 3rd edition of her book, and Paula said she's included new ideas, research that has come out since the book was first published. And for me, it's like this would be such a wonderful gift for a parent to give a teacher. Or if in your school, sometimes schools have professional development libraries, this would be a great addition to that. But to actually implement the ideas that Paula's talked about today, and the whole thing of universal design for learning, right? These are ideas that we come up with when we think of a particular student. But then when we bring them in our classroom, the other kids are like, I want to do that too. Or so, yeah, these are ideas that we can use across the board. So thank you so much. I am so excited that we were able to connect. And every time you come back, I keep promising you a Saturday night jacket.
I think next time I'm just going to make my own and wear it because it's
I
time.
haven't come up with it yet. This is I was going to show the link again, and we'll make sure that it's in the.
Oh, and then we should just say the drawing is going to be,
Yes.
thank you, Kristen. Thank you so much. The drawing is going to be on, what did you say, Wednesday?
So the last day to add comments and questions is this coming Wednesday at midnight Eastern time. and then I'll have the drawing Thursday. And so for every comment, every question that you put in here, either when you were with us live today or on the replay, will count as an entry. You get up to 5, I shouldn't put 2 fingers. You'll get 5 entries as a maximum. And the prize is from Brooks Publishing. It's a free ticket, which is a $300 value, to Paula's upcoming 2-day virtual event, April 23rd and 24th. And that ticket you could use as a family member and gain incredible amount of information. If you're a teacher, it's going to be perfect for you. So I encourage you to tag friends, ask them to come back and watch this replay, and they too will get chances to be entered into the giveaway.
Thank you so much. That was beyond my wildest dreams, especially your A1 breaking news.
I know. But our sponsor for today, and I have to thank my husband for going to the grocery store. And he goes, I didn't know if you wanted the original or if you wanted this. So I bought both. And it's like differentiated instruction right
That's
here.
right. We need it all. We need the laughs for sure. So thanks
Yeah.
everybody for your wonderful comments and questions. And hopefully if there's at least one small idea that will help not only in a practical way, but again, elevate some of these related ideas.
Yes, totally. So, Paula, have a wonderful day. Thank you so much. I just love, and somehow we have to have Wisconsin and Idaho become closer so we can.
I'm working on it. It's my next adaptation.
Okay. But thank you
Okay.
again. Thank
Thanks,
you if you're
Charmaine.
watching live or on the replay. I am Charmaine Tanner, and as a parent, as an advocate, my goal is to help other families make sure that your child is safe, happy, and learning every day at school. So until we return, everyone keep the positive vibes flowing. Good things are happening. So thank you so much for Paula for kicking off this week, and we needed this.
Thanks,
So we
everybody.
shall return. Take care.